So participants will join obviously this this link, right?
No, actually we are taking questions वहाँ पे YouTube live में from the YouTube channel.
Okay,
तो
okay.
वहाँ से भी ले रहा है ये हमारे यहाँ पे locals. We are taking questions in our WhatsApp also.
Okay.
Like कहीं से भी आएगा, locally भी आएगा, YouTube से भी आएगा, so Facebook में भी आ सकता है, Messenger में. So they will give us the questions and I will give it to you.
ठीक है. So if there are questions, then will you write questions. 1, 2? Will you just write 1, 2? Acha, they'll send the question. You just forward it to me.
You want me to forward it or you want me to read it out? It's up to you. Like
I'm just thinking what might be smarter.
Because like after when you go live, I'll go like pura blackout. I mean, audio and video मैं वो कर लूँगा, exit कर लूँगा, but I'll be watching. बस वही है.
Okay, so then maybe you can just feed me as in you can just ask me the question. Might be better.
ठीक है.
You think that's better? You think that's a better system?
I think like कुछ भी चलेगा.
ठीक है. We can decide then.
We can decide. You can just cue me like, Lobsang, are you there? Then I'll come.
Okay, great.
ठीक है. Hi again.
Hi.
So this is the masterclass for sound, and I'll exit the frame and then you can start the class.
Okay, excellent.
Okay, then I'll see you at the end of the class.
See you, or maybe in the middle. Who knows?
Oh, maybe in the middle, yeah. Chalo ji.
Hello and welcome. I'm just going to wait maybe 20-25 seconds so that everybody can sort of adjust their microphones and their headsets to listen to me. At the beginning of every journey, there is always a pause. I've always learned, and maybe this is the time that we should pause so that we get all our technicals in place. While I'm not formally starting, I'll just tell you that I'm in Dehradun in Uttarakhand at the moment, and originally I was going to do this in the confines of my cozy sound recording studio in Delhi, but I had to urgently come away in the thick of night almost. Last night there was a family emergency, so I'm here. But it's great to be here. It's, as you can see, it's a beautiful sunny day. You can see this is not being lit by a cinematographer. It's actually just the natural sun, which will kind of slowly recede as we get along into this class. And this is my home, my mother's home, actually, in just outside Dehradun, about 18 kilometers from the center of town. Beautiful little village, and just behind us there's a really thick, I would say maybe close to 1,000-acre forest. So we are right. This is the forest, and our home is here. And that thought is at the same time scary as well as nice to be close to nature and to get up each day to the sound of birds and not to the sound of horns and city sounds. And I'm not saying this from the point of view of a sound engineer or a sound recordist, but just as somebody who appreciates or has now started appreciating, the little sort of joys of being in the wilderness. So I think, yeah, it's been about 25 seconds. So Hello and welcome to a very, very short masterclass um, on a very interesting actually topic called sound recording and mixing for small budget independent filmmakers. Which is funny because a lot of us, when we begin working professionally, we always, because nobody knows us and we are trying to find our feet in the market, that we encounter people who are either like you, starting out, also finding their feet, etc. But before that, I just want to kind of say that we're living in very strange kind of times, and I hope that everybody watching this, wherever you are safe, your families are safe, and you are doing your bit as filmmakers and artists and people maybe who are more blessed than others. We are doing our bit to help not so lucky others with whatever, in whichever way we can. I mean, obviously, the pandemic has seen a massive destruction of livelihoods, of businesses, of has affected us in ways which cannot be estimated. I don't know whether we'll be able to estimate it, but just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, all of us know, can see, read the news, etc. It's devastating, and we must, as responsible citizens, do whatever little we can, and it could be very, very little, and but it's not little, it's not small. Whatever you do is going to help somebody, is going to put a smile on somebody's face, and I think that's really important. Also, my training as a filmmaker, as a sound engineer, started off with, a large part of my training was documentary, and I find that most of the documentary filmmakers that I've interacted with are very, very have taught me social consciousness in a huge way. And I'm the better for it, and I think this is the time to kind of really sort of exploit that learning, in ways that it helps people. Just to tell you a little bit about myself, very, very shortly, in a very short way, sorry, is that I've been in films for the last 20 years or so, and I've had the honor of working with some of the biggest names and production companies, on the planet, actually. And more than anything else, I consider this to be like a school that I started going to 20 years ago. And I'm still learning how to become better, and how to hone my craft better. Of course, I started work, approximately 22 years ago as an editor in a studio of a upcoming music video director. He was like, the hot thing, the hot property at that time, and I had just joined him. I started working as an editor, and we used to cut. I mean, apart from doing music videos, which I was not involved with so much, I used to cut small promos, film promos. First I started assisting the editor who was cutting promos, and then slowly I started doing it myself. And I think maybe cutting promos and the fact that this gentleman Vikas, who was the editor, he introduced the concept of rhythm to me. And I was already a musician, in my school days, in my college days. I was part of bands, etc. So that concept of rhythm fused together with me being like a kind of an amateur, semi-professional musician, and it attracted me to sound recording. And I remember there was like a really massive Ahuja mixer lying in their studio, which they used to play around with. And I was very interested in, sort of playing with all the dials and this and that. Also, obviously learning what it was for. And it kind of made me realize that, number one, I needed professional education in the field. And that I needed to go, or at least attempt to go, to a film school to study this. And that I did. anyway, so I started as an editor, cutting small promos, which taught me this whole sort of aspect of rhythm, which attracted me to music, back to music, into sound, and that world. And then when I secured an education, I moved on. I started actually working in sound in documentary filmmaking in Delhi, and that happened for I would say maybe about 3 or 4 years. Again, I was working with people who were still finding their feet in the industry, so it was a very there was a lot of camaraderie because they were at the same level as you. Some obviously were uh, big names who I learned a lot from, but a lot of them were like these kind of rookie filmmakers. And I recall, and I learned a lot about, how to sort of film, how to get good quality content out there in like minuscule kind of budgets. I mean, at that time, PSBT was just starting out, and their grants weren't, well, they were good because there was not much in terms of funding, but we were doing a lot of PSBT documentary. Anyway, we'll get into that a little later. But so from documentary, and I'm still on my introduction here. So from documentary, we made our way to, I made my way to doing like short films. And then I eventually moved on, I would say very quickly, into doing really massive, big budget films where like crews were like in the hundreds, and there were departments for every for every sort of discipline of cinema. There were departments which I was new to. There was a department of sound. I was the head of the department of sound. There was a department of cinematography. There was like a large crew, trucks, like lots of paraphernalia. And it really sort of it again, it was like skill set development for me. A big part of working in large budget, large paraphernalia films was man management, because you're kind of working with so many different disciplines and crews that you need to, most of your time offset and onset goes into managing scenarios, managing situations, which is exceptional, because it's a very kind of, it's equivalent to like a corporate structure in a company, and you're kind of navigating your way through, sort of getting the best sound wise, if I can say that. A lot of the times you're pandering to a lot of egos, which actually, yeah, it sort of sharpens your sense of humor. It sharpens your way of handling people, and eventually it's all about people. Filmmaking is all about people, and there's a lot of learning there. So obviously you're dealing with various departments. You're dealing with direction, sets, costumes, production, choreography, actors, animal handlers, gun handlers, sync sound security. So I mean, and all of it is obviously related to you. You're directly kind of on a daily basis. You are associating with them because there is something that you need from them. There is something that they need from you, and that kind of thing. It was always a lot of fun, and it obviously pays a lot of dividends, not just commercially but professionally. I mean, there's a lot of learning that happens on art sets, which you obviously are not privy to, or you do not get on a smaller on a smaller unit, a 3 or 4 people unit. So that's about me. And today, I think we don't have a lot of time. But we will try and cover like a few important rules of thumb to kind of pay attention to pay heed to when you're in this wonderful process of creating and capturing sound for filmmaking. The one most important piece of information that I can give you, that I have learned over these many years of working is that you must, as a part of, and it could be anybody, it could be a sound engineer, it could be a cinematographer, it could be the editor. It's very important to understand um, the vision of the filmmaker. It's probably the most important tool that you will hold throughout the process of not just the film that you're currently on, but the films that you will make in the future. When you yourself turn a director, or you have the opportunity to work closely with somebody who's a director, that you have to understand what their vision is, their idea is. Sometimes it's always good. It's also good to know where that idea came from. What the motivation of the idea was. Now, I say this because every decision that you will make, every decision that you will take, post this understanding, post this kind of post imbibing this idea or this concept of what the director, what the writer is thinking, will determine every decision that you make. It will. So you could be a sound engineer working on, like a documentary film where you could be in a 3-man crew, or you could be working on shorter films, which is like bigger, or you're doing drama, which is scripted or unscripted, whatever it is. Every decision that you will make will come from this vision, will come from understanding totally what this person or what these group of people are thinking. So the idea is to fully immerse yourself in this thought, in this idea of the film or the documentary or the short film. And I cannot impress this enough, even if I say it twice. Knowing the script as well as anyone, and understanding the motivation or the theme of the film is absolutely vital. And if one uses this as a guide and tries to at every step put themselves in the shoes of the person who thought of this idea or who has the best grasp of this idea, then I can say with a fair amount of confidence that you are in great hands. Now, just sort of always connecting back to, how to sort of get the best in sound in a low budget kind of way. This is very important to understand, because whatever decision you make should not be based on only budget. It has to be based on what is good as a theme or as the thought, and then to align it with the budget always. But if we continue to think that, oh no, we don't have enough and we need to sort of sacrifice, you'll find that things will start to go awry. And I didn't learn this early enough. I learned this with experience, and it does come with experience. So if you align yourself with this initial thought of the idea of the director, then you're going to be smooth sailing. Anyhow, moving along. Now, working in documentary and working in drama, working in short film or advertisement they're all very different roles. And as somebody who's doing sound, you'll have unique challenges to all kinds of scenarios. So, for example, as a production sound mixer, your idea is to record, let's say, as cleanly as possible. I mean, your primary role is to, as a production sound mixer on a film which is scripted, is to record the dialogue as cleanly as possible. Is to record any kind of effects that will help post-production in any way as cleanly as possible. Is to record when you visit a set or you're in a room or you're in a location. The idea is to always record location atmospheres or location ambiences. When you're in a room, the tone of the room. And these kind of ideas or this kind of practice, I would think, helps you in every sort of filmmaking. I mean, you'd be amazed that when you reach post-production, let's say let's say you're making a small documentary film and you reach post-production stage, and let's say your film is about talking heads. You've recorded a lot of talking heads giving interviews. You've taken some shots which you can cut away to from those interviews, and that's all you have. When you're editing and you're putting in sound on your timeline, etc., you'll realize that the little gaps between people talking, or suppose you're cutting in between people talking because you never retain full interviews, you'll realize that to join those little sections, you're finding it hard to overlap. And this is something that happens, this is something that you learn when you've actually recorded sound and then you have to edit that sound, which happens to us now mostly all the time because we pick up projects which are like end to end. But prior to this, when I used to only record sound, I keep on saying sorry, but when we used to record sound, I realize the importance of this as much as I do now, because now I'm actually editing a lot of this. So when you're joining, let's say, an interview, and you're cutting in between and then joining one more section to it, this little section that you've kind of overlapped on, you'll realize that you require atmospheres or the ambiences that you recorded on set, and they really kind of help to kind of bring everything kind of together as a glue, almost. So this is something that I've learned with experience, and because you're working so much in isolation, you initially do it by rote, because other people have done it before, you just do it, but you don't actually realize the importance of it until you start actually sitting down and editing something on your own. So coming back to what a location recordist does, that he records dialogue, he'll record effects, he'll record ambiences, atmospheres, room tone as cleanly as possible. So conversely, when you're working in a studio environment and you're like a post-production supervisor, for example, you will find that the kind of challenges that you have, the kind of skill set that you need to have is slightly different. You're dealing with, film has been edited, film comes to you, and you're kind of putting everything together. You're creating what is called a soundtrack, or you're creating Foley, you're creating effects, you're creating music, you're putting all the dialogue together, you're kind of processing the dialogue, etc. So it's a different set of challenges. And then depending upon the scale of the production that you're in, you could be dealing with like various teams. You could have a Foley team, you could have a background music team, you could have somebody who's doing special effects. If it's science fiction, you're doing special effects. If it's not science fiction, you're just doing effects. You have ambiences, so it's a large crew of people kind of working together. But the idea here is that whatever the approach to all of this is, the aesthetic, etc., is going towards one focus. It's bringing, so production sound, post-production sound editing, Foley, music is all coming together to create one whole, this one whole. So the idea is to kind of always keep this thing in mind about what is the theme, what is going on here, like in the sense, what is the story that the director is trying to convey. And like I said, if you're one with that, then I think you're kind of on the right path, you're on the right track. We'll get into the nuts and bolts of actually recording sound now, because we've kind of seen, we've got a little overview of what are the kind of sort of major departments of sound, and how they kind of sort of align themselves to the whole of filmmaking. So let's get into a little bit of how effectively or efficiently we can actually record sound when we don't have a lot to work with. So a lot has changed in the last, I would say, 10-15 years, not only in technology in filmmaking, but generally speaking. So, and I find that uh, in the olden days, capturing sound used to be, you needed to have a little more expertise. You needed to have a little more skill level to kind of record sound, because if some of you know, the machines, the gear, the equipment that we have earlier was kind of big. To look at it was a little intimidating, if you know what I mean, and everybody could not operate. But I find that in the last 15-20 years, and actually a good example is what happened with photography. Earlier, to take a good photograph, you needed to have all the, as what you say, the tam jam of having a camera, knowing how to sort of load the camera with film, understanding exposure, understanding f-stops, all that kind of thing. Maybe you were doing flash photography, so you needed to understand how to light a room and how the flash synchronizes everything. But see what has happened over the last 15-20 years with the coming of the smartphone or the cell phone. Even your grandparents or somebody from the era of your grandparents can take an equally good photograph as you can, and without having the knowledge of exposure or anything. All you need is a good quality phone. Even the really terrible quality phones take half decent photographs. And the same in a way has happened with sound. Like, yes, of course there exists equipment which is top shelf and would require somebody who understands sound or who has had training in sound to operate those things. But let me give you a really rudimentary example. In this period of having been confined to our homes and working from spaces from within our homes, we've, as the lockdown as it's called, as a post-production studio, we have a lot of people sending us VO recordings, which are being used for a lot of projects that we do are for museums, like huge audio installations, massive, for maybe 1,000 people, etc. And you'd be surprised that I wouldn't say a lot of them, but some substantial amount of them have been recordings which have been recorded on a simple device like this, like on a smartphone. So and everybody cannot afford to buy an expensive recording, like a recorder or an expensive microphone. Some of them can be really prohibitively expensive, and obviously they do give you the result that they advertise. But you can get by. You can get by with recording. I mean, this is blasphemous, but you can sometimes get by recording on a simple thing like a cell phone. And during this time, as I said, we've got a lot of VO artists who obviously cannot leave their homes, who have have issues with coming to a recording studio because it's a closed space, and with Corona, with the virus kind of being the way it is, that they send us recordings via, like, maybe a small recording device. It could be a phone. It could be like I would say a semi-professional recording device. And the idea here is I've always kind of believed this, that it's not the person, it's not the device really, but it's the person. It's the person who's actually recording, which makes all the difference. And so even though it's blasphemous, or my fellow recording engineers would not like that I'm saying this, but with a little bit of practice and with a little bit of common sense, you could make a fairly good recording just using a phone. I wouldn't say that you should do it all the time, because it does create problems for maybe post-production designers or post-production sound engineers like us. But I'm saying in a situation where it's not possible, you can always use whatever you have to get a decent quality recording. And it's how you use it, and it's not what you use that can kind of make the difference, between that. So let's just move to so this is a very generic. I've made a list of things that I think if you follow, you'll be able to kind of you'll realize that you can sort of you can have sound which is usable, which you don't have to sort of tear your hair out at the post-production level, at the post-production stage when you're editing or you're mixing. And this has always helped me in good stead. And again, the caveat here is that it's not what you have or what is available to you, but it's how you kind of use that. So these are very simple, basic things, but often they don't kind of stick in our brain as much as they should. Number one is that you must try and capture sound as cleanly and accurately as possible. So, I mean, again, without getting in too deep into what this means, just a very general overview is that suppose you're recording, let's just take the example that I was talking about earlier. Let's say that you're recording a voiceover. And let's say I need to record a voiceover in a scenario like this. And I don't have a choice. I have a phone with me and I have nothing else to kind of use. So the number one thing is, so when I say cleanly and accurately as possible, I'm recording my own voice. Is this room conducive to record? So my answer is probably not, because just by talking, and maybe what you can also hear right now, you can maybe hear that there is a kind of a reverberation in the room. Now, maybe that's not very ideal. So what we do is choice of place to record must be good. So I find that you have to trust your ears about this. And if your ear can hear it pretty good, and you can always do a test, you can always make somebody else talk to you in a room and see how it sounds, then you can kind of use whatever you have to record in that room. And that will determine whether it's a good or bad or usable. I would not say good or bad, but a usable recording. It's important to also keep in mind that extraneous noises, if you're maybe near a busy road, or there's a machine close by, or there's some construction going on somewhere, it could be far, and those things you can hear with your own ears, then probably it's not the best place to make that recording. So this is about it being clean, it being free of anything which is noise. And when I say noise, it doesn't mean that it's noise which hurts our ears. It could be anything which is not what you are recording. The second and the more important, or maybe equally important thing, is that your recordings should be free of something called distortion. Or I mean, there could be words for it that maybe distortion is a word that you also is synonymous with crackling or cracking, or digital distortion. But it's basically having your whatever recording you have done, or whatever signal that you have recorded, to be as clean of any kind of distortion as possible. The other thing that goes along with this is that your recording should be at a good level. Now, in most semi-professional and professional recorders, you will have some sort of an indication that of signal, of the strength of the signal. But in a phone or things like that, you do not have that. So, well, you're limited, I understand. But if you have a semi-professional recorder, if you're recording directly on your cameras, you must always visually check if your signal is within the range that it should be. So, well, in the olden days when we had a mixer that we used to connect to, let's say a camera, we would always align the two together. We used to send out a tone or a signal to the camera, and we used to align it to whatever camera we had at a decent level, so that we had, if somebody, while we were recording, somebody screamed or there was a loud sound, it wouldn't distort. So we would give that kind of headroom or leeway for the signal to kind of operate in a comfortable kind of dynamic range, if you understand that. So these two things are important. Record as cleanly as possible. Record the source as accurately as possible, and record the source distortion free and at a good level. The other thing that I want to kind of talk about a little bit is perspective, and it's important to understand that a little bit, because our ears are a guide to this. That suppose you're recording me, you have a camera placed on me, and this is your shot size. Perspective in this case means that I should be hearing myself pretty close. Imagine you and I are, let's say, this distance from each other. And when I listen to you, I'm listening to you pretty loud, pretty clear. So that's perspective. That you can kind of hear my voice, all the elements of my voice. You can hear a nice bass, you can hear the highs, you can hear the sizzle of the sibilants. In this kind of a shot, you should be able to hear it well. Now, suppose you're recording, you've got an interview situation, you're recording with this kind of a shot size. Your microphone should be somewhere close. So you can't be recording a shot this size, but your microphone is like really far away from where I'm talking. So that's perspective. So the idea is, with recording at a good level, distortion-free recording as cleanly and accurately as possible, you must also have some sort of idea as to where to position your recording instrument. Maybe a mic, maybe a recorder, etc. Converse to this is, suppose your shot is really wide. Imagine, well, we are not in that kind of a shot, but imagine your shot is really far away. You're standing maybe 10 feet, 15 feet away from your subject. And your frame is like that. You're kind of seeing the sky, you're seeing the background, you're maybe seeing some mountains or some villages or whatever, and your character is standing right there. Then your perspective has changed. Your perspective has become much wider, something like this, and not like this. So the important thing is to kind of adjust the sound to that perspective, because if you close your eyes and you listen to the sound, you automatically create an image in your head of that perspective, of that scenario. And that's very important to kind of, so that visual and sound kind of retain the same aesthetic. So I think we have a few questions. So I'm just going to run through quickly with just some rules of thumb before we take a few questions. Like I said, so just to recap a little bit, clean sound as accurately as possible, keeping perspective in mind, making sure that there's no distortion. Your recordings are at a good level. Again, I'd like to rattle that back, that good equipment doesn't give good sound. In most cases, you are the person who is controlling how well you're recording the sound. So common sense always works. So we'll just quickly run through this. Monitoring your sound or listening to what you're recording is vital, because in a lot of cases I've seen that you will probably look at the recording instrument. Let's say it's a recorder or a camera, and you look at it and you'll see the signal level kind of fluctuating, and you'll say, oh, it's great. I can hear, or I can see that something is being recorded. But that's not always. It could be noise which would be recorded, and there could be some problem within the microphone that you've connected, or the source, or there could be a problem with the camera itself or the recording device itself. So the only way to eliminate that scenario is to monitor, is to have a pair of headphones and to be always listening to what you're recording. For run and gun filmmakers who like, single film, like, filmmakers who are doubling up as sound engineers, etc. They must put this into practice to always wear headphones, because when you're shooting something, it's not that you're closing your eyes and shooting it, you're looking at the visual, so you must listen to the sound. We could talk a little bit about lavalier microphones or lapel microphones, but I'll quickly say this, that the use of them is good. It's really helpful when you have scenarios where you have like a situation where people are walking around and they're not they're not sitting in one place, or when you're doing short films and let's say your boom operator or the microphone that you have in your hand on a fishbowl cannot reach the person. It's a very, very wide shot and there is no way to put a mic. That's when a lapel or a lavalier mic actually, or a lav, comes in use. Center of the chest is like just the rule of thumb. Always, that's your best sound. It's equidistant from any kind of turns. We always encounter, or almost always encounter, clothing noise. So that's something to kind of be careful of. But this is something that we have to get into a little more depth. But just as a rule of thumb, not too close to the mouth and not too far away from the mouth. Maybe somewhere here in the middle is always a great place to place a lavalier microphone. Yeah, I think we've kind of covered some sort of idea of how things should work in kind of when you have budget scenarios. I'm going to ask Lobsang to maybe feed me some questions so that we can kind of wrap this up. Lobsang, if you can hear me.
Hi, Girja.
Hi.
Wow, that was too good. We have got some questions in YouTube Live. So I'm going to feed you questions. Like it's not much. We have got 5 questions.
Okay.
So the first is from Unicorn Entertainment. So he says, thanks for being a part of AFF. The question is there a standard system of processing the voices to fit the environment seamlessly, as we lack professional equipments in our state in terms of outdoor and indoor shooting as well?
Okay, so yes, I mean, I kind of understand this question. There is a way to standardize. There is some way to standardize this, but most often not. It's very contextual. It's very situational. But there are a lot of tools available to filmmakers now, and they're pretty inexpensive tools to kind of standardize this. So let's say you have scenarios where, let's just consider this scenario where I'm sitting right now. To my ear, I can hear a kind of a reverb to the room. And maybe when you project this on a very, very large screen, it might be distracting because maybe the words are not very clear. This is not any promotion, but there is a very interesting, I would say, like an audio cleaning software called Isotope, which is what I use because I'm a poor filmmaker, poor sound recordist, and it's very easy on my pocket. But it gives you a lot of sort of tools to adjust situations like this. For example, it's got an algorithm which is called de-reverb. De-reverb. It basically removes this kind of a reverb from the room. So you can kind of to answer your question, yes, you can standardize, but it depends from situation to situation. So, for example, if there is distortion in your track, there's something in this software called declick or declip, which helps you kind of deal with that kind of distortion. So standardization is possible, but remember always that it's your ears which determine that standard. You have to honestly trust your ear, what it's telling your brain. That is the answer.
So we're going to move to the next question. I think number 2 and 3, number 2 and 5 are kind of similar. Cut scenes says, hello sir, how to pick the best video production mic? And Bumming Chama says best equipments for sound recording. I mean, he asked best equipments for sound recording and how to pick the best video production mic. I think this question is kind of similar.
It is similar. So the best way to pick, I guess, anything in this world is to do a little bit of research, and to maybe ask professionals who have used that kind of equipment. Now, for budget situations, we have, I would say, a sizable amount of companies who are putting out microphones, recorders, lavalier mics, all kinds of audio gear there. But personally, I would not go below a certain standard. And when I say certain standard, I mean that, let's say, the standard that I'm talking about is still pretty inexpensive. It won't burn a hole in your pocket. So you could always look at things like Rode, ROD. It's an Australian company which makes microphones which can be mounted on top of like your camera, etc. And they are great production, or ENG capturing microphones. Sound Devices is a great company to kind of pick up. This is probably the answer to the second question or the first one, where you can pick up very inexpensive recorders which you can kind of just mount at the side of your, on your belt, like a belt pack, and then connect it to your camera while you're shooting. Actually, these days, because the trend has moved towards single person filmmakers, there's lots of gear available, and what I can do is I can maybe populate a list of companies which actually provide this equipment, because it's a range of stuff, and it wouldn't be fair for me to even say that this is better than that, because it all depends on what you can afford, what your application for that is. And that is because you have so much range. A lot of microphones cater to a certain scenario but don't cater to other scenarios. For example, the word shotgun probably caters to situations where you need a very narrow angle of acceptance, whereas omnidirectional, which picks up sound from all over, are for situations where you need to pick up really beautiful atmospheres or bird sounds or scenarios like this. So with Lobsang, I can work and populate a short list of stuff that you can look at. You can also ask me specific questions as to, this is your scenario, what will work best for me.
Is there some place the people, the young filmmakers can directly ask you, mail you questions or something?
Yes. So what I'll do is I can, yeah, absolutely. No problem at all. I'm always available to help. What I can do is I can either tell you just now, there is my studio is called Depot Records, and my email address is simple. It's Depot Records, DEPOTRECORDS 511 at gmail.com. I'll also send this to Lobsang, and he can kind of circulate that.
Yeah,
and
we'll post it in the page.
Okay, excellent.
Great. And the next question is, I think you have mentioned it, but it's from Spark Film Production. It says, sir, recommend us a good sound editing software name.
Okay. So again, lots of sound editing software is available. I use something called Pro Tools. It's a very popular industry standard digital audio workstation. A lot of your editing softwares, video editing softwares, also come with, like Adobe Premiere comes with I think it used to come with something called with Audition. Yeah, Audition. So you can also use that. But if you really want to get deep into kind of processing sound, and maybe you have the time to treat sound, then I would recommend either Pro Tools or something called Nuendo, or you could try even Logic is a great software to kind of use. Audacity, I know, is available. free off the web. It's called Audacity, and it's available free. You can download that and use it. But obviously, the free softwares probably won't have as many, sort of tools as maybe the paid softwares will. Pro Tools and most other softwares now are available on a subscription model, so you can always kind of use it for the time that you want to use it, and then just sort of dispose with it when you don't. But yeah, these are some of the softwares that you can use.
Okay, the last question is from Kenmo. Kenmo asks, Kenmo says, hello sir, I am an individual filmmaker and learning everything by myself. My question is, in an interview with more than one person, should we use boom mic or individual lapels?
Okay, so this, I'm sorry to ask you a reverse question, but it depends on how many people there are and how they are placed, how they are sitting, what kind of environment it is.
Okay.
If you have, I would say, if you have the, I shouldn't be using the word budget, but if you have the resources to, if you have the resources to put individual mics on everybody, that would be great. If it's a quiet scenario and it's intimate and you know that it's controlled, you can, and if it's a 2 people or a 3 people kind of scenario, you can get away, and you don't have the resources, you can get away by placing a microphone, somewhere which is like a sweet spot, which kind of sounds good for all 3 parties who are speaking. So yeah, if you have resources, mic everybody separately. If you do not have the resources, then maybe find a quiet room. Like I said, it's you who controls the quality of the recording. It's not what you use. It's how, with your common sense, you kind of come upon a good quality product eventually.
Okay. So, and one question from me. I just wanted to know about, like, you mentioned about isotopes, right?
Yes, isotope.
Software. It's a software.
Yes.
Okay. It's same as like Pro Tools, or like it's kind of.
So isotope is primarily a noise reduction software, which will be an addition to products or software like Pro Tools, because it integrates seamlessly. So for example, and you're an editor, so you'll know this very well. On a timeline, you have lots of clips, and suppose there is one clip in that which you want to treat, which is very noisy, or it has some sort of distortion, or the reverb needs to be taken out. So it's as easy as just going to that clip and sending it to Isotope, which is also on your system. Going to Isotope, treating it, and then sending it back to Pro Tools. So it's like both the softwares kind of talk to each other. They're talking to each other all the time. So it's quite amazing. The technology is quite amazing.
Cool. Just one question we got right now. So I hope this is the last question. We're running out of time actually. Sir, should I record external or internal on camera? Which is better and quality work for good quality sound? I think internal or external camera.
So usually on most cameras, if I'm not wrong, the internal mic is the mic which is on the camera itself. A lot of cameras come with an inbuilt microphone. You'll kind of see it right in the front, or with small DSLRs, there'll be a tiny little hole on the side which acts like a camera, which acts like a microphone. Now, obviously, when you shift the switch to internal, it means you're recording via that microphone which is on the camera.
Yeah.
When you shift to external, it'll mute that camera, it'll mute that microphone, and then you have to use an external microphone to record onto that camera.
Yeah.
As sound. So it's not, I guess it's not about what is better or not. It's about what your utility for it is. Now, in situations where you're very close to the subject, I would recommend that if you do not have the resources, that you use the internal camera, because you cannot put an external camera. But if you're sitting far away from each other and you need to record an interview, or you need to record musicians or whatever, then it will be better if you find the resource to get additional microphones and use the external camera setting or external mic setting on your camera.
Okay, I think that's it. Thank you so much for joining us from
Thank you.
Dehradun.
Thank you.
It was such a pleasure. I mean, it's
Thanks.
such refreshing for us to, like, for me also personally, I sat through the whole class and it was so like, actually it was like going through a class.
I could see you yawn, Lobsang.
Sorry?
I could see you yawn.
No, I wasn't. No, I swear.
I'm just joking. I'm just kidding. But I'm just saying that 40 minutes is 40 minutes is a time to just give a kind of a very general overview. I'm always available, and this is and I mean this. I'm not saying this because some 2 people or 3 people could be watching, but I'm saying this because I'm available to help out in any which way that I can. I have a studio. People could ask me specific questions about what happens in a studio environment. I mean, I've done a lot of work on location, so questions are always welcome. My email address is with you. I can send it to you, and people could always write in and ask. So no problem at all.
I hope you could join us like next year. Here in Arunachal. मिल गया वो क्वेश्चन मिल गया बोल दिया ठीक है then that's it, like we have gone like about the time limit, so I hope if I come to Delhi I'll land in your studio.
Thanks a lot. Thanks
Thank you
a lot
so
for this.
much.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you so much.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye bye.